G'day, Fiona. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. Thank you for being on the show, and I'm hoping you're having a great day.
I am having a great day so far, Grant. Thanks very much for inviting me to be on. I was really pleased to get the invitation.
I'm very pleased to have you on the show. I'd like to talk to you about what photography means to you. Why are you a landscape photographer? What is it in your life, and how does it fit into the rest of your life?
Yeah. So photography is a lot to me. It's part of my identity, really, being a photographer. It's a creative outlet. I think probably most people on the show would say that. It's a way for me to relieve stress, to be going out into nature and connecting with nature, connecting with myself as well. It's been a healing tool, healing from burnout. I went through burnout several years ago. It's also been a healing tool from grief. I've lost both my parents in the past few years. It's a way also for me to connect to other people. And I think for me anyhow, my background is in documentary photography originally. And so it's also a communication tool. For me, I think you probably know the quote, it's a longer quote, but the last part, you only protect what you love. So for me, it's a way of communicating about nature and the outdoors and the things that I would love for people to fall in love with so that they protect them.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, ultimately, the kind of, even if it's not a clear, blatant message, ultimately I'm trying to show things that isn't nature super cool and amazing, maybe protecting it. And as I said, it's something I started originally, seriously back in 2000, and then was going down that track and then put on hold for an extended period and picked up again in 2016. And so, it's become like a really important part of my life and something that I find when I'm not doing enough of, I really miss it. It's a little bit, I don't want to say it's like an appendage in a way, but so it's kind of come me. So, yeah.
You've opened up a few avenues to explore, and I'd like to run down some rabbit holes with you. Okay. You said you're mainly or were mainly a documentary photographer, and I'm interested in the artistic side of that and how that has possibly evolved in your technique, but also in how you're expressing yourself as a means of creativity. Because a lot of people start documenting family life, trips, travel, places they've been, etc. And then all of a sudden something clicks in their head and says, oh, this is actually an art form and I can be artistic and creative in the way that I do this, as opposed to just going out, seeing a scene, taking a photo and coming home and putting that maybe in a book, or if they really like the shot, on their wall. How has that evolved for you? And I'm just interested in the artistic side of things and the creative side of things in the main.
Yeah. So when I first got into photography or discovered I wanted to get into photography in early 2000, it was landscape focused. And as I was away and my mom and dad used to spend I'm from Canada originally, by the way, and part of the year, and splitting my year now between Scotland and Canada. My family, my parents are Scottish, so I'm splitting my time here. But this is when I was still back in Canada. And my parents at the time were spending their winters in Arizona. And so I was down staying with them for a couple of weeks, and we were in an area, and I went into a photo gallery and saw these incredible images. And that was what hooked me. I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. And so I got back to Vancouver and I did an intro to photography course. It was a photography school in Vancouver at the time. And I did that and then a darkroom course and progressed over the summer. And then I went on a sort of a workshop retreat it was a woman who was a photojournalist, documentary photographer in partnership with an Indigenous community north of Vancouver, and about the logging that was happening in that area. And over that summer, I was about to be leaving Canada later that year, at late 2000. And so that was what got me interested. I thought, okay, this is something I want to do. I want to be doing photography, but that's bringing awareness to environmental issues in particular, maybe social issues as well, but particularly about environment. And so when I moved over to Europe, and I'm mainly in the UK at the time, early on, and I was going down, I did a part-time photojournalism course, like an evening part-time course in documentary photography and photojournalism, and was going down that path. And I actually applied to the school to do my master's with them. And I was going down that path and then did not a U-turn, but a sort of side turn, and ended up instead doing a master's and doing my postgrad studies in environmental social sciences, because I wanted to do something that I felt would be a bit more hands-on, a bit more practical. At the time, I wasn't really sure that a photo would actually be enough to change behavior. And I thought I need to do something more practical. And so that was when I parked my photography on the side. And I still did it when I was traveling or if I was out hiking. And yeah, I don't do so much people. So I wasn't growing up. My dad was the one who did like, that's how I got into photography. Like first, my first interest in it was through my dad. And his documenting was everything we did. It was family outings, it was holidays, all that kind of stuff. And so for me, it was more about, yeah, it was still nature focused predominantly. But anyhow, so I put that all on the side and then came back to it in 2016 after having worked in not really corporate field, but I worked in sustainable transport and urban mobility for over a decade, predominantly an EU project. And I was based in London at the time and not very happy with my life and ended up getting burnt out. I was just working all the time. I had no life outside of work. I was working holidays, working weekends, working. And part of the problem being in London is I didn't have that connection with nature. I wasn't going out. So for me, I realized, and I had realized it earlier on, of course, but when I was living in Vancouver, if ever I was stressed or things were getting a little bit too tense, I would just go out hiking or I'd go mountain biking or I'd go out to the forest or I'd go down to the sea, something. And in London, I didn't have that. So I went back to Canada for a while. And that was when I decided one day I'm going to turn 75 and I don't want to say that I've never tried to do anything with my photography. So that was when I picked it back up. And at that time, that was when it became this kind of healing tool, this way of getting rid of not getting rid of, but recovering from the burnout and just reconnecting with myself and reconnecting with nature. So I was back in BC I ended up actually being back for 3.5 years. And so it was going out, it was hiking, it was wider landscape. So I was going cross country skiing or snowshoeing in the winter. So it was these snowy forest mountain scenes. It was going to the lakes. It was all that kind of, and then over time that kind of progressed and changed. And I know in one of your recent episodes with Max Truman, you were talking about over tourism. And so I've seen a lot of that. And so I started off doing those hot spots and then got less and less interested in doing that and started doing more abstract kind of stuff or more places that there weren't tons of people and something that's just different for me. And I just don't want to be doing the same stuff that you see everybody else posting on Instagram. And so it's interesting too, because I'm a hiking guide. And so ironically, as I've done my guiding qualifications and started doing more hiking for business, at least, part of what we need to do is we need to be able to point things out to people. And so it's called environmental knowledge. So it could be like, look at this really interesting plant over here to the right of the trail. And, oh, look at this bird that's flying in. So it's having a general knowledge of all these smaller things. So whereas I used to just go out hiking and it's okay, let's just get up to the summit and get there fast. And maybe I'll take some pictures along the way. Now, or it has become that I'm looking at some of these smaller things. And so I'm discovering plants and oh, wow, look at that. Isn't that really cool? And look, oh, there's this insectivorous plant. And look, there's dying bugs on it or different things like that. And so ironically, as I'm spending more time in the mountains and guiding, that's actually changed my photography to become less wider landscape to more smaller, intimate scenes. So yeah, and then often more abstracts as well.
Yeah, interesting. And the conversation around wanting to do something with your photography, I'm really interested in what you were thinking when you were having that initial thought and how that's evolved since you started doing something with your photography. So I get that, yes, when I'm 75, I want to look back and say, yes, I actually did something, but did you at that time know what that something was?
I don't know if I knew. I thought of maybe what I wanted to do. And so when I say I wanted to try something, like actually make a try of doing something on a more serious, more professional level of not just taking photos for of whatever I was doing. So it's evolved in a way because at one point I wanted to do more like travel photography kind of stuff. So basically, when I decided to leave my previous career and get into what I'm doing now, before I decided what I was going to do, I was like thinking, how can I get paid to travel and be in the outdoors and take pictures? And travel writing and travel photography seemed an obvious choice.
Yeah.
And as things have gone on in the past few years with the market just basically becoming really saturated with everyone wanting to be a photographer and influencers and all that kind of stuff, it's not as easy. It's become really competitive. And I've changed a little bit. I still would, I mean, someone said, hey, we'd like to send you on assignment to XYZ country, all expenses paid. Yeah, sure. Like I'm up for that. But also, and I know this was something you were also talking about with Max, is this whole thing of over tourism. So I've got this mixed feelings of wanting to go, and the same with my writing or anything I'm doing, even if the trips I'm organizing and taking people on, of wanting to go to some of these, say, hidden gems. I hate that word because nothing is really hidden anymore.
Very rare to find a place that hasn't been explored.
Yeah, I don't know. As soon as someone says, "Oh, here are a bunch of hidden gems," you have 200,000 followers, so it's no longer a hidden gem because you've just told everybody where to go. But so I have this struggle of wanting to go to places and tell people about them, but really not wanting to tell them about them because I don't want to contribute to over tourism and I don't want the places to get wrecked, basically. So yeah, so anyhow, it's progressed from there. And as I said, I still have this underlying desire to communicate with people to get them to want to look after places and protect them or get more involved in that kind of side, or whether it's just writing a petition to their local politician or doing something a bit more. And now, as I said, my photography has changed from doing the wider landscapes to more smaller scenes. I've started doing more macro. I'm doing some more ICM. I was doing a lot of drone work a few years ago that I've not done as much in the past few years, partly just for circumstances. And when I'm based in Scotland, it's often raining or windy or both. Not very conducive to flying a drone, unfortunately.
You should try doing that when it's raining, windy, and at night.
Oh, yeah. No. I had a drone. Listen, I know you ask about disasters. I won't go into that yet, but I almost lost a drone a few years ago, and it's given me that little bit of nervousness every time I fly now. Any chance at all. Like even when it's a bit windy, I won't fly as much now. Not just because I don't want to say I'm terrified, but I'm very nervous that it's going to get lost or fall out of the sky or get blown away or something like that. So I tend to be a little bit probably too cautious on that side nowadays.
Yeah. The wind is one thing that I always watch out for. And if the wind forecast is above a certain level, then yeah, the drone's definitely not going up. The other one, particularly doing coastal stuff here, is birds of prey. And so before the drone even comes out of the bag, I'm looking around. Is there a sea eagle? Is there a hawk? Is there a falcon somewhere around that's going to have a go at me? Particularly when it's over water, because that's the last thing you want to do is have feathers and propellers flying around and falling into the drink.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, if it's birds. So I had a day when I was out last year in the west of Scotland, and there was this really cool river delta, and the tide was slightly tidal and the water was out, but the tide was out. And there's these cool little bits of land formation. So when I'm doing my drone photography, I often do direct top down and more abstract views that you can't really necessarily tell what it is, and you can't tell how high up I am. And anyhow, so I'm off flying around there, and this bird came along and it was not happy. And I was like, oh, okay, that's it. Like I'm bringing it back in. Obviously, I don't want to lose my drone, but also I don't want to hurt any birds. I don't want them. I don't want to just be disturbing wildlife and altering their behavior and their patterns, or if they're nesting or something. So I was like, hey, it's time to bring it back. So yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit deeper about some of the preservation and protection of wild areas. It's got to extend a little bit more than just not posting where the location is, because I think looking at your work and seeing some of what you're talking about, both on social media but also in other spaces, you're very active around making sure that people are thinking about the places that you're taking photos of in a way which some other photographers may not be doing. And I'm just interested in exploring both the why for that, but also obviously preservation of nature, but a little bit deeper than that. What was the reasoning behind that? But I also want to explore a little bit about how you go about putting together that package of words and images that actually says, okay, here's why you need to protect this.
Yeah. As I said, my background, I did my master's and I did part of a PhD, which I didn't finish, in environmental social sciences. And I ended up working in sustainable transport, but I also was doing other things as well. And I was quite active in different campaign groups, and I ended up working in Brussels for an environmental NGO. And so I have this campaigning advocacy background as well. And for years, even before I was doing that, I was always members of different organizations and signing petitions or taking part in protests or whatever. And so I, th- I think I just find it really discouraging sometimes because, and it's been 20 years. I just realized it's been 20 years since I finished my master's. And at that point, I got discouraged because I thought we've already had these problems for 20, 30 years or longer, and nobody's really doing that much about them. And now we're 20 years on and it's gotten worse, and still there's not enough action. And yeah, so it's when I was doing my master's, there's something that's called, which you might have heard of, called the value action gap,
Yep.
which is basically someone has their values and they think, yeah, I'm all for, let's say, someone who wants to travel sustainably. I'm all for sustainable travel. And this is an issue we see a lot of, especially in the UK, but in Europe in general or in other places. I'm all for sustainable travel. I want to reduce my impact, but ooh, look at that. It's going to cost me £50 to fly to Rome for the weekend. And if I go by train, it's going to take me this much extra time and it's going to cost me £300. So I guess I'm going to fly. So where people having their values and they say what their values are, but their action doesn't actually tie in with what they say their values are. And often people will say their values because they want to believe that those are their values, or they want people to think they're a good person, and they actually don't take the action. And that's part of the reason why I didn't go down that documentary photography route. There's other reasons as well, but that was one of the things. Is I thought, okay, but it's just showing someone a picture of what's happening going to be enough to change behavior, to get people to take action. And definitely in the past few years, a decade, couple of decades, we've definitely seen images that have created awareness, whether it's war issues or wildlife protection issues or environmental degradation or over tourism or whatever.
Sure.
And those have actually brought about action. But there's also a lot of complacency. And there's also, I think, a lot of sense, especially nowadays with the situation in the world, there's also a very strong sense of helplessness and people feeling like, I'm just one person. What can I do against the power that be in just this?
Yeah. I think there's also attitudes where people will say, well, I'll get serious about it when the government gets serious about it. Because I'm paying my taxes, they should be doing something about it way before and they have much more power to do something about it than I do as an individual.
Yeah. And I think also there's people who think it can't really be that serious a problem yet because
and then you've got the other end of the spectrum, which is, it's not even happening.
Yeah, exactly. And then you get also people who are, I can't remember the term for it, but people who think, oh my God, we're going to hell in a handbasket. So I better go and do all the stuff now that I can do while I can do it, because in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, it might not be possible at all. So it's almost like when after the pandemic, they talked about revenge tourism. It's almost the same thing of let me go out and do as much as I can and often unsustainably as I can, because soon I won't be able to do that. Yeah, so it's quite complicated. And yeah, one of my best friends, because with my background in advocacy, sometimes it's been quite direct, in your face campaigning. And one of my best friends is very much the softly convince people without them realizing that you're convincing them. And so I think also with my photography, definitely I'm posting stuff like on Instagram or whatever, for example. I'm definitely posting things online on social media that's, hey, this awful thing is happening, or protect the wolves, and email your MP or something and protect or do something about it. But there's also a bit of that. The underlying message is this, but I'm not blatantly in your face, because I think also people will just, in some degree, turn off and be like, oh God, here she goes again with her on about save the planet. So yeah, and I think there's ways and times of doing it, but it's a really difficult thing to balance and to get right. And that's why NGOs in particular, they're often changing what they do and how they do it in order to try to get the support and get people drawn in. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess one of the things that I'm interested in with environmental protection photography, for want of a better term, there's probably a much better term, environmental conservation photography or whatever. I'm interested in what you hope people feel or take away when they look at your images and read your social media posts.
I would want there to be some kind of emotional connection, a curiosity perhaps as well. I think also if it's something that can make people look at things in a different way and think, oh, I never thought of that before. I didn't realize that. Or wow, the number of times I've passed by that little plant at the side of the trail and never paid any attention to it. And I didn't realize what an important part of the ecosystem it is, or how it relates to other things, or whether it's something like here in Scotland in particular, I was out recently and with some clients and they were like, oh, look at all the beautiful rhododendrons. Yeah, but they're an invasive species. They were brought.
They're not meant to be there.
They're not meant to be here. They're definitely not. And they're very invasive and they spread and they're choking out native plants. And that's the thing too. And people come here and they think, oh, look at this incredible, beautiful nature. And it's actually massively lacking in biodiversity. In Scotland,
It's like the lupins in New Zealand. You see, every season they flower. Everyone's got beautiful pictures of them. But again, another invasive species. They shouldn't be there. They shouldn't be part of that landscape.
yeah. And that's the thing too, because in the UK in particular, in Scotland, because I'm based in Scotland, is having people understand. Like I saw something last year that someone was talking about the wildlife in Scotland, and it was a Highland cow. And I'm like, that's not wildlife. That's livestock. That's an animal that somebody owns. That is not wildlife.
Yeah.
And so compared to Canada, when I go back to Canada, and I mean, there's obviously issues with the wildlife protection there as well, but there are no predators in the UK, like no apex. There are no large animals. And so people come here and they don't realize and they don't understand how out of balance the ecosystem is here and how messed up it is, basically. And so if it's something that just gets people to maybe go off and do some research on their own or to understand an issue that they didn't understand before or they didn't know about before, and maybe it makes them interested in something that they'll then go out and shoot themselves and get involved in wanting to protect. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's...
Yeah, I think the fox or the badger, I know the badger's bigger, but I don't think they do a lot of predation. They're more grubs and scavenging more than anything. So I think the fox is actually the largest predatory animal on the British Isles that I'm aware of.
Yeah. Yeah. We've got in Scotland now, we've got Scottish wildcats, which are like giant fox. And they've been doing a breeding program for them. And so they did their first release in October, I think it was October 23. And so now So now they know that the ones out in the wild are now breeding themselves. But the issue with them is their habitat has been so fragmented and they're starting to breed also with domestic cats. So that's very cool. But yeah, there's whole sets of campaigns and different organizations that are for rewilding Scotland that have proposals like reintroduction of the wolf or reintroduction of lynx, or they're already doing some reintroduction of beaver. That's not really a predator. But yeah, the UK is extremely predator averse. They're, I think, the only country in Europe that doesn't have any, I think maybe one of the only countries in the world really that doesn't have predators.
New Zealand, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know that there's any in New Zealand either that aren't introduced.
Yeah.
But I think New Zealand was, I'm not sure exactly. I think that was natural, largely.
Right.
Maybe the Maori had a bit to do with it. I don't know that history deep enough to know that.
But, and sometimes there's obviously been cases where accidentally or on purpose they've introduced other animals. I remember someplace, is it Australia or New Zealand, where they introduced something where it came in, I think rats or some kind of rodent came in off the ships and then ended up eating some of the native birds. Is that in Australia?
No, that was New Zealand. They had that. So Tasmania, there was
Tasmania.
A significant rat problem down there, and it gradually started to, and foxes also, which were deliberately introduced by people in the 18th century because they wanted to hunt like they used to in the UK at the time. The history of animal introduction into particularly Australia is we've got some terrible examples, the cane toad, for example, and we're now, I believe, fighting off fire ants as well. But
yeah, people's stupidity knows no bounds.
Absolutely. I guess one of the things that I get from this conversation around your photography is that you clearly have some goals in your photography, and that's an important part of your photography. Do you coalesce some of those goals into broader projects, or are they, okay, this broad goal and kind of everything I do leads up to that broad goal?
That's a good question. So one of my main subjects for photography is waterfalls, especially when I was living back in Canada a few years ago and got more into photography. And then I discovered long exposure waterfalls. And so it became a goal to just go to as many waterfalls as possible. And so it's, especially in BC, there's, I think, thousands of waterfalls. And so it's just more and more. And every place I went, I would go see waterfalls. And I've just the past few years with my business and with guiding, I've not done anywhere near as much photography as I would like, and not enough just for me. Not been, yeah, I've not been doing as much, and I've been doing smaller. I've started doing, as I said, I've started doing more macro and a bit more ICM. So when I'm out someplace, I can do something, I can do some shooting if I'm not in the kind of place where I would otherwise be wanting to do the kind of other shooting.
Sure.
Let's see, other projects. I don't really have any projects as such. Not, okay, I want to create this body of work that is this. It's more on, it's partly destination focused. Who doesn't have a ton of places they would like to visit, really. Yes, it's more destination focused, I think. Let's see what else. Yeah, I'd like to be doing more, getting back more into doing more drone stuff.
Okay.
And because I haven't been doing that very much in the past few years. I'd like to be doing a bit more macro stuff. What else? I'd also like, with kind of on the abstract side, when I'm back in Canada in particular, because I don't find it so interesting here in the UK because there's a lot of the buildings, so urban space, call it urban landscapes.
Yep.
I don't find the older architecture that interesting, but in North America, Canada, where you've got these sort of quite interesting modern buildings, glass and steel and the whole thing, I'm starting to do a bit of that with kind of abstract and ICM. But yeah, in terms of big projects, I don't have anything on my plate at the moment.
I'm the other way around with the buildings in the UK. I much prefer the old, particularly things like the Industrial Revolution stuff, Telford bridges and viaducts and those sorts of things. Those sorts of things just fascinate me. The fact that somebody actually had the wherewithal to do these engineering projects 200-300 years ago, and they're still there, still standing, still functioning by and large in a lot of cases. And but the newer stuff, it doesn't leave me cold, and I'll photograph it, but it just doesn't hold my interest as much as the older stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting because going to visit the place, and so I actually just earlier this week, I was up in Dundee, and I went actually to go see a photography exhibition, which was at the Verdant Works, which is the jute museum. And so there's an area of Dundee where there were all these jute mills, and it was like a massive industry at the time, and there were slums and all this kind of stuff. And so just going in there and seeing this building that used to be a jute mill and all the machinery and stuff, that was really interesting. But from a photographic perspective, for like abstract and ICM, I find the modern buildings more intriguing.
You definitely see for an abstract or ICM, then the modern stuff works better. The symmetry and the lines and so forth work far better than some of the older, more ramshackle buildings have gone. The days gone by would much better.
Yeah. And Montreal. I was born in Montreal and partly grew up there. And it's one of my favorite cities. I have to say, if it wasn't for the climate, I would totally move there. But they've got it's such a cool city. I just love it. It's got some really cool modern design. And it's just, there's this like creative vibe that flows through the city that I just have never found anyplace else. And so it's got some really cool, really interesting buildings. So I quite like being there because you do get the mix of the old. So in the old Montreal, you've got these buildings from the 16 and 1700s. And then you've got all these modern buildings that are different shapes and colors and really quite cool and fun to shoot for me.
I want to get into that decision again to do something with your photography and the decision to start doing something professionally with your photography. A lot of people struggle with that decision. They don't want their hobby to become a chore and therefore more like work, that they end up hating it. How did you go through that thought process of saying, okay, I now really want to start making some money out of this because I can, but also it's something that I really have burning in me that I want to do?
Yeah. So I'm not solely a photographer, so I'm also a hiking guide, and most of my income comes from guiding. And for several reasons, partly because nowadays, in particular, as I was saying earlier, the photography market is really saturated. And I think
it's tough to make a crust out of photography alone.
It's a hard graft. And so I've got some friends who I can see them struggling with their businesses, and they're not doing things like weddings or portraits as well. And you've got to get people in for your workshops and your photo tours, and maybe you're selling prints and all that. And so I just thought, I don't want it to become something that is a struggle. I want it to still be something that's fun, that is my stress relief, that is my way of reconnecting with myself and nature. And there's previous activities I've done in the past where I've started working in that field, and then it has been exactly as you say. It's become a chore. And the same with guiding isn't as much, but I definitely, when I'm guiding, like I'm not hiking for me, and I'm often hiking with people who are not as fit or who are older and not as
Sure.
fast. And so I've actually noticed my fitness level has decreased quite a lot since I've become a guide, which is ironic. And not exactly how I want it to be. And I notice also, so if I'm teaching somebody, I especially wanted to be able to teach women, because I can see from my own experience, not just in photography, but in other fields, especially male dominated fields and anything that's technical, that often I find women want to learn how to do something before they go in it, whereas guys often will just jump in and off they go and they'll observe their
Even
friends.
try and
Yeah.
yeah,
And so I wanted to be able to do that, to be able to give women an experience, people in general, but especially women, an experience of being able to grow and learn so that they can become confident and go off and do their own thing. And also in terms of photo tours, in particular, workshops as well, of taking people to places. Again, it's this protect what you love thing, that it's a way of helping people also, as well as just showing someone an image. It's also a way of taking someone to see it themselves and teaching them about it, that maybe that will make them want to protect it or go and protect their own place. But I also wanted to be able to balance, because I'm not just interested in hiking and guiding, and I'm
sure.
not just interested in photography. And I've had people say to me, like, you need to niche down and you need to decide what you're going to do. Are you a hiking guide or are you a photographer? And I'm like, I can't pick one or the other. I won't pick one or the other. I'm both. And so maybe guiding is my main chunk of my time and my main income, but I don't want to give up in photography. And it's still in its early stages. I'm still building it. But it's because also earlier when I said it's a creative outlet, it's because I didn't grow up being creative, let's say. Like my parents were of the old school of art or creativity or any kind of creative outlet, something you do for fun as a hobby. It's not
Right.
something, go to university, get a degree, get a real job
It's a
kind of thing.
pastime,
Exactly.
not a career.
And exactly. And my brother was really artistic and creative, and he wanted to go to art school. My dad discouraged him, and I shouldn't say made him go to a real university, but wrongly influenced him. And yeah, so to me, growing up, I was a smart academic one, and my brother was the artistic, creative one. And so I just thought I wasn't creative. And so I think that was also part of it too, is when I came out of this burnout period, I really wanted to have some creativity. And I think because it helped me connect with nature and myself and all that, and was this kind of healing side of it, that it made me want to be doing more of that. And I thought, if I can be also doing this for a living, and if I can be sharing that with other people, then yeah. And I think it had been a dream when I was younger for such a long time. And I just thought, I don't want to give up on something that's a dream just because it might be difficult, or because the market's saturated, or because for whatever fears or insecurities. And so I just thought, okay, I need to try. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But at least I can say that I've tried, and
Yep.
I'll have fun in the process. But yeah, I think for me, just so that I have that balance also of different activities, yeah, that's important to me as well, because I can't, as I said, I still need to be doing each of those aspects.
Mm,
Yeah. And so that one doesn't become as a chore, that I can do something else as well and have some variety.
sure. What's success in your photography look like?
So there's different sides of it. So obviously, if you can make money at it, that's a form of success, I think. But it's not just the money side for me. It's that whole kind of thing, especially from the campaigning side. If you can change even one person's behavior, then you're successful. So if it's something where I can teach one person how to do something, like how to do long exposure waterfall photography, and that really gives them joy, and they go off and they become more serious with their photography or enjoy it more, do it more, that to me is successful. If there's something that I'm putting out there that also makes someone love something enough that they want to protect it, that to me is success. Yeah, I think it's more, I think also success for me is growing in my photography and developing, and in some ways changing. I look back at my waterfall photography from when I first started it, and images I thought were really great at the time, and now I'm like, oh yeah, that's not so great. Yeah.
I think
I
we're
like
all
to
the
burn
same.
out or this or that. I'm like, oh, okay. Yes, if I was just basically staying stagnant and doing all the same stuff all the time, and my shooting wasn't changing, or the subjects I was shooting weren't changing, then to me, I feel like I'm not being very successful. And I
Yeah.
think even though I don't like it, and don't like the feeling of being uncomfortable and feeling like I don't know what I'm doing or I can't quite get this. I know that if I'm not doing that, then I'm not going to be successful because I'm not expanding myself and not growing and pushing myself. So I think there's that side to it as well.
I'm interested, talked a bit about doing some education for your photography early on and then picking it up. I'm always interested in the way that people learn the craft and how they then get that mastery, which the typical 10,000 hours, everyone has to practice, because otherwise you're not going to improve. I'm just interested, though, in those early lessons in photography, how they've helped you grow in your photography and grow in confidence with both techniques and also in experimenting with new and different techniques.
Yeah. In the early days, it was film. It was on film, first of all. So this was back in early 2000, April 2000, early 2000. So I did an intro to photography. I can't remember if it was landscape photography or just photography. And then I did a darkroom course. And so it was developing it ourselves and printing it. So that was basically more of the technical side. It wasn't as much of the creative composition, artistic.
Sure.
So that I think it's a little bit of trial and error of taking an image and thinking, like, that's not so great. I thought that was good, but it wasn't very good. And especially in the days of film, because you didn't know it necessarily at the time.
No, you can't look at the back of the camera and see what it's going to look like.
World now, aren't we? And getting them back and all the money to pay. It's also, I was shooting at the time on slide film. So because a friend had said, well, I think it's Velvia or something like Fuji Velvia, do that and get color and the whole thing. Okay, great. So I'm paying all this money to get these slide films developed and then not really doing much with them afterwards. I have probably in my storage, I've got tons of boxes of slide film, of slides and developed slides that, they're just sitting there collecting dust probably now. But yeah, so then when did I get it? I think 2005 was probably when I got my first digital camera. And let's see. Anyhow, so it's just point and shoot. And then when I was doing, because when I was doing my photojournalism course, that was less in the technique and more on the different styles of what we were doing. And so we had class projects and stuff like that. And so that probably developed me that little bit more. And not probably, it did develop me obviously that little bit more. And then I was doing more shooting. I was out traveling and doing different things. And certainly in the early days, I found critique quite difficult because it equated it a little bit because, as I said, I didn't come from this creative background. And so suddenly something, this image isn't very good. Suddenly it means, I'm not a good photographer. Okay. So that kind of impacted me a bit as well. And I think certainly in the recent years, it's been, I have said, a lot of friends do watch YouTube videos. That's not really my thing. I don't really learn best that way. I'll Google search, I'll ask friends, I'll be out with them, I'll observe what they're doing. That's how I've learned in the past few years, I'd say the past decade probably. And so it's more like an introduction to the technical side and then developing that. And then also obviously the documentary photography side was a little bit more focused on here's what to shoot and how, not really how to shoot, different approaches. And then it's been more self-taught over the past decade.
Sure. What advice would you have for a photographer that is interested in that environmental conservation side of things, in balancing the desire to capture a stunning, unique image with the need to respect and minimize impact on their natural environment?
Yeah, that's really difficult, especially,
because you've got to go to those places that may be delicate ecosystems to be able to capture something that's unique that nobody else has ever photographed.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And for an example, talking about over tourism, there's a waterfall here in Scotland up in Glencoe area that, has become Insta famous basically. Yep. And everybody wants to go and shoot it. And I've just seen in the past few years, this whole area around this one spot where people want to stand and shoot, it's trashed now. It was all kind of grass moorland and kind of a bit boggy. And now there's no grass, it's bare, muddy soil and it's awful. So so for me, like I don't want to do any impact that's not completely minimal. And so for me, if in general, it's also asking the question, is it really worth going to shoot that? Can you keep your impact minimal enough that it's not going to do any damage to go and shoot that alpine meadow flower or insect on that rock or whatever, or that cool, or in a cool rock. So yeah, it's such a tricky balance because, and also that sometimes we're not even sure ourselves what our impact is going to be, and
No.
until afterward, or some like that one place, the person who took that original photo and then geotagged it probably wasn't thinking that this is going to cause thousands of photographers to come to this spot and it's going to get wrecked. Yeah, I mean that is a general thing I would say to people and on the side of protecting places is if you really love this place and you want to protect it, don't geotag it. Don't tell people where it is. Don't put a YouTube video out saying, here's the exact location and the postcode and here's how you get to it. Yeah, but it's a tricky thing to balance. And I say for other people as well, the same thing, that if you want to protect something, think of how you message it.
Yeah.
And how you would shoot it in a way, because that's the thing. It's also, you don't want to just shoot it. Here's a nice flower that's endangered. Let's protect it. Or here's an insect or whatever, a bird. How can you, and it's not always easy to, how can you message it in a way that is actually going to make people interested and want to take action? And that's not always an easy thing to do. And that's, I think, one of those things that you learn as you kind of practice and you go along.
Yeah. I think one of the things you mentioned early on, petitioning your MPs, petitioning government protection agencies or environmental protection agencies, joining up with groups that are actually active in that sort of thing, positive actions that you can take and advice that you can use your social media for to actually help people understand why you're saying this is a pretty flower that's got to be protected. Yeah.
And actually, that's one thing that you just made me think of is if somebody has a particular thing, because that was when I was working in environmental NGOs, it's easy to jump on the bandwagon of every cause and issue that there is because you
Sure.
really want to and help and protect and all that. But I'd say try to narrow it down. Like, what is your thing that you want to protect? Is it the moorlands? Is it the glaciers? Is it this insect or this plant or whatever? And who are the organizations that are working on that issue? So can you partner with that organization? And also, some of them don't have very good images and some of them don't have very much budget. So is there something that can you go and take some images for them that they could then use in their campaigns or in their whatever, in their messaging or their social media or something? And like, it might be like in a volunteer basis. You might not get very much money for it, but that's also a way of having your work do good. So I think, yeah, because also a lot of, especially some of the smaller type of campaigning groups and organizations, they don't have the people who have the capability of taking the images, enough images, and they don't have budgets for it necessarily. Yeah, so I'd say that's a helpful thing to do.
All right, fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about where you like to shoot. What you've got a favourite place that you keep having to go back to?
Yeah, so because my life is a bit like, I see a lot of photographers who they live in that one place, they've been living there for years, and they keep going back to the same place over, and they can shoot it in all different conditions, and they wait for that one moment where they get exactly the conditions they want. That's not me. So as I said earlier, I'm splitting my time between Scotland and Canada, and I'm traveling quite a lot for work. So I'm usually, so far in the past few years, I've been in Canada for spring, summer into autumn-ish, and then back in Canada for the winter, because my guiding work, I don't have any work here in the winter. And I've now my guiding qualification also in Canada so that I can go back there and work as a snowshoe guide or a hiking guide in Canada in the winter. But so actually I'm going back to BC in 3 weeks. So I'll be doing some guiding there for the first time for a couple of months. And so I'll actually be back for part of the summer, which is going to be the first time since 2018. So that'll be nice to be back for the summer. And I'm not here in Scotland usually in the winter. So I see people's images and like, oh, look at these amazing scenes of the Munros up in the Highlands of Scotland with the snow on the top of them and all that. And so I can't get those images because I'm not here for that.
Yeah.
So there aren't places that I keep going back to in the same way, at least seasonally. But in terms of places that just keep calling to me, coastal BC in particular. So yeah, my home in British Columbia. There's different areas in Scotland and waterfalls also. Any waterfalls pretty much call to me. Where else? I mean, I've lived in quite a few countries. But the ones I've done most photographing in is definitely Scotland and Canada.
Sure.
There's places I want to go to that I've been there, will be someplace I'm like, oh yeah, okay, this is someplace I need to come back to. So I really want to go to, in particular, Central America, Costa Rica and Panama for waterfalls.
Mm.
Next year, late spring, early summer, I'm going to Newfoundland.
No.
I've been wanting to go there for years. It's the only province in Canada I've not been to. I've
Okay.
been wanting years and years. And next year's a big birthday. So I'm like, okay, this is it. I'm doing it. And I also actually want to start running trips there. And I want to see the icebergs. And then I want to see puffins and seabirds and do some hiking and see little coastal fishing villages and all that.
Cool.
So I think it'll be a place that once I've been there, I think that'll be a place that draws me back. BC also, it's got everything really. It's got temperate rainforest, it's got mountains, it's got sea and coast, it's got interior, it's got lakes, it's pretty much everything you could want. So to me, that's really the place. If I had to just pick one place I could shoot at ever for the rest of my life, I would pick coastal BC.
So that's your retirement plan, is it? When you're 75 and you're kicking back saying, this is where I want to be?
Retirement? What's that?
Okay, 75 probably a bit young. When you're 95,
Yeah.
thinking about retirement.
Yeah. Yeah, it's difficult because definitely like Vancouver that's my place. That's like my happy place, my soul place, you could say. And even though I've been gone for 25 years, it's always something that kind of draws me back. And I can look at photos or videos that people have done of Vancouver and it just feels emotional that in the way that no place else ever has. But having said that, Vancouver has changed so much in the past 10, 15, 20 years, or since I left, even when I first moved there, in the first 10 years, I could see a big change just in terms of the influx of people coming in, especially since the pandemic, but even since the Olympics in 2010, it's become extremely expensive. So even as much as I might want to be there, it's kind of like, can I actually afford to be there anymore? I need to be a lot more money first before I can do that. But yeah, in general, yeah, I'm not sure. There could be some place I travel to in the next 5 or 10 years that I think, oh, actually, this is where I want to be long term. It's not the UK, that's for sure. I definitely know it's not the UK long term. Also, I'm not very good with the cold. And I have to say, even though the temperature here isn't very cold, I thought my dad would have said it's perishing. The house, it's nice to go back to Canada where the homes are properly insulated and efficient heating systems because I'm so cold here all the time in the winter.
Wow.
So yeah, so someplace with a kind of a mixed climate. That's what I find is so great about Vancouver is because you've got a fairly warm, dry summer, but not too hot. You've got a not too cold winter, but there's snow on the mountains if you want to go do winter sports and snow related things. And there's great shooting. And so you can still do I can still do waterfalls because in other parts of Canada, waterfalls free. So there's no shooting, or even other parts of BC, actually, once you go central BC and east, it's frozen. So yeah, there's so much there to shoot and there's such a great lifestyle. And so yeah, probably it will be there.
Nice.
But I've only been to small areas of Australia once. You never know. Maybe Australia will be the place.
That's certainly where I'm going to retire at some point.
Yeah.
My wife and I are actually in the middle of building what we're hoping is going to be our retirement home, but
Okay.
it's a couple of streets away from the shore of Lake Macquarie.
Nice.
About probably, I don't know, 10, 15-minute drive to about a dozen different beaches. Yeah, there's no waterfalls though. There's trade-offs. Some of the beaches there have some pretty special characteristics. There's one there, Caves Beach, which has these beautiful sea caves that you can actually get into at low tide. And you can also fly the drone out and check them out from the sea side. And that's basically where I'm hoping to cark it when I'm done. I'm interested also in the stories that people carry around with them of memorable experiences or journeys. And I'm interested in something that might be about where the journey or the experience itself was more interesting or more meaningful than the final photography that came out of it. Have you got some place or some journey that you've been on that was a little bit more than the end photo?
Yeah, it's often, certainly when I'm hiking, and nowadays in particular, I find that I'm not doing as much, or I find my images are maybe not as interesting, and call them vacation snaps really, because I'm doing something and the focus isn't photography, I'm photographing what I'm doing. So I'd say a lot of the hiking trips that I've done have been really interesting or really impactful, but the photography hasn't been so great. One that I don't know what my image is. One I'd say, or a couple actually. One in particular, a really memorable trip was hiking the GR20 in Corsica. This was back in 2007, when you're 18 years,
Okay.
long time ago. The landscape is absolutely stunning, and that's what's yeah, it would have been holiday snaps kind of thing I would have done at the time. It was before I really got more into photography again. I'd love to go back and shoot there because it's such a beautiful spot. I've done also a lot of hiking in the Rockies in Canada. Again, that yeah, I didn't do too much shooting, or the shooting I got wasn't super great. Where else? Even nowadays, when I'm out hiking, I'm going to some really stunning places with clients, but I'm generally focused on them. So I even
Sure.
sometimes don't bring now because I just not going to get the kind of shots that I want.
It's always a challenge, isn't it, when you're tour guiding or running a workshop or something? You've really got to concentrate on the client and not your own. I have heard stories about other people that have done the opposite. Said, "Oh, well, you go off and do your thing. I'm off over here."
I'll see you later. I'm going to have to do my own thing, and I'll see you back at the bus in
Yeah.
5 hours.
I don't get that personally.
Yeah, I don't get that. To me, it's like I'm there for the person, whether
Okay.
it's hike or tour, some kind of tour or photography. And I feel like if someone's paying me to take them to someplace, then I'm focused on them. And if I can also get some shots, that's great. But that's not what I'm there for. And if I
Yeah.
want to get shots, then I'll go there by myself or with some friends or something. So yeah, so I don't really get that side. But yeah, like I find nowadays, and especially partly because of the increasing weight of my camera bag, and I'm little, like I'm 154 centimeters and I weigh like 47 kilos or something. And so my camera bag sometimes is like a third of my weight. And I also find it throws off my center of gravity. So I find I have to decide sometimes now, am I going out for shooting day? And then I'm not going to do that much hiking, and I'm not going up too high or for too long. Or am I doing a hiking day? And if I'm doing a hiking day or backpacking or something, then I have to decide, okay, am I going to bring my camera? And if I do, I'm just maybe bringing the body and one lens,
Sure.
maybe, and which is a shame because I'm sometimes going to places that are amazing and spectacular, but I'm not getting images that I might otherwise be able to get or want to get. So yeah, I find that a bit of a difficult balance sometimes. Yeah, and especially when I'm traveling like this. I'm heading off guiding on Saturday for almost 3 weeks, and this time I'm not taking my camera with me because also then it's just something. It's in my bag, and I won't leave it in the vehicle because I'm always worried about it being broken into and things being stolen. So yeah, then I'll just end up using my phone and getting.
I always struggle with that decision about which lens to take when you're trying to lighten the loads, and I always tend to pick the wrong lens because you end up getting there and going, "Oh, I wish I had the 70 to 200," or "Oh, I wish I had the wide angle because I humped the 70 to 200 with me, thinking, oh, this will be good for tele."
Yeah. Like I've been out recently a couple of times and said, okay, like I'm going to be going to this spot, and I think that's conducive for probably having a longer lens, but I think I also need my 105. Okay, I'll bring those both, but then I've also got my extender. So already that's like at my limit.
Yeah.
But if I'm going out to do macro, then I basically will just bring, that's it. The
Sure.
main lens comes off, my 24 to 105 comes off, and putting the macro lens on. That's it. But that would be more if I'm going out locally or I'm doing something where I'm going to a specific spot and I know that today I'm wanting to shoot macro. Like when I'm traveling between Scotland and Canada or wherever, if I'm going for a longer period of time, then I'm bringing everything with me. So yeah, that's when it gets heavy. And then, yeah. But then if I'm going out to do some shooting, I'm just finding I have to now decide, unfortunately, and what am I going to shoot today? And that means that if I'm out with just the long lens or something, like, so I was just out doing the puffins recently. And so I thought if I find a really cool, actually, so earlier this week I went out to see puffins, and it turns out the puffins have already gone mainly, which was super disappointing. And so I was like, oh, what am I going to shoot now? There's nothing really to shoot. And there's some cool plants here, but I don't have my macro lens. Yeah, I have to limit my.
It's always a difficult choice.
It is, yeah. That's the thing is, going to find the more serious I get with my photography and the more professional, let's say, and the more gear I've got and the more weight it is, I have to then really decide what is it that I'm going to go out and shoot today, because I don't want to bring it all with me. And also the thing too, I think I'm often out by myself, and I think as a woman and a small woman, I'm not worried as much nowadays about going out somewhere and being physically attacked by someone. But I was out at a waterfall last year in Yorkshire, and I was at this place shooting, and these 4 guys showed up. And my first thought was like, oh my God, what if they decide to rob me?
Yeah.
And that's the thing too. So now it's also, I'm conscious of not having too much gear with me at once, because if I did get robbed, then they're not getting all of my stuff.
Yeah. Fair enough. You mentioned near the beginning of the conversation about a horror story. Tell me about it.
It wasn't a horror story as such, but it has affected my shooting. So I was off up in the northeast of Scotland, and I had my drone. And so often when I'm shooting drone stuff, I'll often look at Google Earth and find places that I think look interesting from an abstract kind of view.
Yeah.
And so anyhow, so I was heading south, and I was at this one spot, and I didn't feel like flying the drone. I thought, actually, you know what? I'm here now, so let's just do it and put it up and fly it off and just get the shots and off you go. And getting it all set up and everything's fine. And because I don't like, and I know you talked about this recently with Max, I don't like flying my drone when there's people around, because I know, even for me as a drone pilot, I find other people flying drones really irritating if I'm out hiking or at someplace, and I just think,
Yeah. When you're not flying one, they're really bothersome, aren't they?
yeah. And so that's the thing. Like, I don't want to be bothering other people
No.
with my drone. So generally, if there's people around, I won't fly it, or I'll wait till people are gone or whatever.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I've gone off to this edge of the parking lot, and somebody came along. I was like, oh, no, and I'm going to have to move to another area to be away from them. Anyhow, so it's in this area, and I put it up, and I'm not exactly sure. So I was in an area that it used to be an old radio tower, but is decommissioned in the 80s, mid 80s or late 80s. So there shouldn't be any kind of radio signal there anymore. Anyhow, so I put it up. It's all fine, and it's up at whatever feet it's at, 20, 30 feet, 40 feet, whatever. And I was going to send it out over the sea to see this coastal shot. And all of a sudden it took off, and I had no control over it. It just flew away. Thank God it flew inland, because I had to force it to crash. And then it was in this field, which I then spent, I don't know, 15 or 20 minutes looking for it, and I couldn't find it, and I couldn't find it. I was like, I'm not leaving here without my drone. If it takes me hours to look for it, I'm going to find this thing. If I have to go through every inch of the grassland here, I'm finding my drone. And I did find it, and it's fine. It wasn't damaged or anything. But that could have been bad. If it had gone out and it left and gone out towards sea, I wouldn't have been able, it would have just gone. I wouldn't have been able to force it to crash, because I would have had to get it into the water. But that kind of gave me this fear of, oh my God, what if it takes off and I can't control it? So, oh yeah. And there was one time, another kind of thing was, so since I left Canada in 2019, in June 2019, the rules changed. And so you didn't used to have to be registered if you had, I have a Mavic Pro, and so the original one. And so, it's over, obviously it's a larger one. It's over 250 grams. So you're supposed to, in those days, you didn't need to have licenses. Now you have to do a Transport Canada test and all this other kind of stuff. And the same in the UK, you have to pay for an annual
registration. Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. So you don't have to have a license. You don't have to have done your, whatever it's called here, but you have to at least be registered. But to avoid that in Canada, if you've had a Mini, then you didn't have to. So off I went, and I bought this Mini 2 so that I could be doing some droning back in Canada. And so I was in Victoria, I was on Vancouver Island, and I was at this area where there was a pond, like a sort of wee lake, and this bridge over it that was an interesting shape. And so I put it up, and that was fine. I got my shots, I brought it back, and I hadn't realized it didn't have obstacle avoidance. And I got it a little bit too close to a branch, and it wasn't that high up. It was all maybe, I don't know, 12 feet up or 15 feet up or something, but it clipped this branch and it fell. And so it had some of the propellers broken. It was fine. It wasn't injured. I put it up again to make sure it was okay, and it was fine. But that also, so these two things, did I have something else? Yeah, that's about it. Drone wise, with my regular camera, I've not had any, thank God, I've not had any horror stories. Oh, actually, no, I do. It's not a horror story, but last year, Nisi sent me a bunch of filters and stuff to try out. And so I often doing this trip in Slovenia, and a waterfall chasing trip in Slovenia and Croatia. I was testing it out to see if I wanted to run some workshops there. And so the first day I'm using the filters, and I had the CPL on. And so we're at this waterfall, and I'm shooting it, and I'm adjusting my CPL to get some before and after shots to use. And suddenly I was like, oh, it's not changing. And I was twisting the thing. And it's like, what's happened? I looked, and the CPL had fallen off. And I was like, and so anyhow, so we weren't right by the water. There were some rocks below, and there was like this wooden platform that we were on. And so I spent half an hour, I think. I did finally find it, but I was like crawling around underneath this wooden platform and looking around. I thought, okay, it's fallen off and it's rolled somewhere. Where has it gone? And there was people standing around. I was thinking, oh, God, someone's taken it. And all these different things going through my mind. So, how am I going to call them? Hi, yeah, I just lost the CPL that you sent me. Could you send me another one? Anyhow, I did find it. It wasn't broken. It wasn't damaged. It wasn't scratched. That was a bit of a miracle. And yeah, so now I'm super careful with it. I didn't have it quite screwed on properly.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are my 3 semi-horror stories. But yeah, fortunately, nothing else major. No real damage to my camera. Oh, actually, no, there was another time. This is a couple of years ago. I thought my camera was going to pack it in. I was out or someplace. I can't remember what I was doing, but I just remember it was really wet out. And so my camera bag, I had a smaller camera bag just for my camera and lens, not like my big camera bag. And it got quite wet. And so I guess it got humid. And so I had my camera in it and it wouldn't turn on. And I thought, no, it's gotten wet inside. And anyhow, it did eventually come back, I think a day later. But yeah, nothing super serious, nothing that's required new lenses, new filters, new bodies, new drones so far, touch wood. Yeah.
That's good. Do you like taking photos alone or with other people?
Both, but generally alone. It's funny because I'm more of an extrovert than an introvert. I do appreciate time to myself, but historically, I would have, especially with travel when I was younger, like after uni, I went traveling around Europe for almost 6 months. And I didn't want to come alone, but there was nobody who wanted to do the kind of trip I wanted to do or was free to go for that long. And so I just went by myself and then discovered, oh, I actually can do things by myself. And so it's often been like that. The times I'm available, the places I've wanted to go to, what I'm doing, often there's just not people to do it. So I've often gone out on my own and just gotten used to doing that. And so I really like being with other people and from a learning perspective and seeing what they're shooting and how they're shooting and different techniques they're using. But in general, I prefer to do it by myself because then I feel less restricted. I feel, I'm not being swayed in a way, let's say, by what they're shooting and what they're looking at. I'm not feeling, especially with waterfalls, because I can literally spend hours at shooting one waterfall. And especially even when I go out with friends who are photographers who are totally not minding at all how long I'm spending there. With people who aren't photographers, I wouldn't really bother because they'll just get fed up after 10 minutes. They'll be like, are you done yet? Can we go? And after half an hour, hey, we should have been done ages ago. And after 3 hours,
I'm just waiting for that cloud to move over here.
I'm just waiting to get one line of water in a certain way. So, yeah. And I just find that if I'm not quite looking at things in the same way, I'm not going as far away as I might otherwise. I'm not wandering off to do something. Yeah, I just find it affects how I look at things, what I'm looking at, and how long I'm shooting. And I just find sometimes that I'm not spending as long to get the shot really the way I want it, that I'm hurrying through to go off and catch up with them or to have them not waiting for me. So yeah, mainly alone.
Nice. What about when you get back from a trip? Are you straight into the edit or
Yeah.
leave it for a month or 7?
Or a year or a
Or
decade. So I will usually come back and download them right away just to get them off the camera, get them off the memory card just in case something happens, and also just to make sure that they're saved. I'll usually have a look at them at the time and think, oh yeah, okay, that worked out well. Obviously I've looked at them in the back of the camera, but I find, especially with my aging eyes, that I can't see close up as well anymore. And so just looking on the back of the camera, I'm not seeing the detail. And so I sometimes look at it and think, oh yeah, it's a good shot. And I get it back home and think, yeah, not so much. That didn't quite work out how I wanted it to. And yeah, but anyhow, so I download and I might maybe mark some and say, yep, okay, this is to be edited. But I let them percolate for a wee bit, let's say. And also I don't really enjoy editing. So this is my flaw. Don't enjoy it. I figure if I've got a chunk of free time, I'd rather be out doing more shooting or hiking or outside doing something rather than sitting in front of my computer. And also, yeah, I think because I don't really like it, I don't spend enough time doing it. I'm not improving as much as I should do with my editing. So it's this vicious circle of I don't enjoy it because I feel like I'm not that good at it, and I'm not getting good at it because I'm not spending enough time at it because I don't like it.
You tend to avoid the things you don't like. I'm always fascinated about photographers that don't like editing because To me, I think just having done film back in the day, it's no different to your darkroom technique. And if you haven't got good darkroom technique, it's hard to produce really good images. And I actually had a conversation last week for listeners. It was actually yesterday when I recorded it. The conversation went around not processing images, but resolving them, because
Okay.
you're actually taking them from the raw into a resolved piece of work. And it was just an interesting conversation. So if you haven't listened to last week's episode, go back and take a listen. Fascinating, that conversation around that resolution. And I've adopted that term now. I'm not going to use processing it as much anymore. Simply because it does change the way that you think about that side of things, editing and getting the image to the way that you want it to be. But I'm always fascinated about photographers that don't like editing. I personally just see they're two sides of the same coin, and you can't do one without the other unless you're willing to let some guy in India do. I get emails all the time, I don't know about you, saying, I can edit your images for you. I don't want you to.
Probably a friend, someone who I trust, whose style I like. But I think also it's partly because I'm a bit of a perfectionist and I don't want to be spending hours on getting an image to be exactly just right. What about this? What about that? What about this?
Yeah.
I like it to be a fairly quick process. And I think also because of my documentary background, I don't do composites. Don't generally nowadays I might do more so to make an image really, but generally I don't want to take an image of some place and be like, okay, like there's one waterfall I shot in Ontario a few years ago and there's telephone poles above it. And okay, so I posted it back at the time and it's, yeah, there it is. And there's the telephone poles. And someone said, oh, why didn't you edit them out?
Good thing.
Hey, where the spot is, that this is true to life. And so I see some people's images, like there's a guy in Canada, I remember years ago, I saw one of his images and this early in my days, I'm like, oh God, I'm never going to be as good at that kind of thing. And so it was this waterfall with this Milky Way above it. And then he was trying to sell a webinar tutorial or something on teaching people how to process their images. And he showed the original. And so the original was a daytime waterfall and it was actually not shot. And there was water on the lens and the sky was whatever. And it was a bit boring. And then he got a Milky Way shot and he blended them together. And I was like, oh my God, that's not even a real shot. That's a fake shot. Yeah, so I didn't want to. Yeah, beautiful shot. It was beautiful, but I think that's a thing too. It's also giving people false sense of this is what you need to do, and this is how you're a good photographer. You can do this. It's like, that's not even real. So I think just for me, it's like I want places to look like how they actually look. I want the scene to be how it actually was, and there's limited changes that I will make or things that I'll cut out. So there was a waterfall I shot in Quebec last autumn, and it's this really nice pool, and it's got the nice swirls with the leaves and all that. And I didn't notice at the time, because I can't see so small, that there was this broken off branch sticking up right in the middle. And so that I will edit out to make it a bit nicer, because also it's cutting into the pond. But yeah, in general, I won't do that. I just want it to be a fast process. And I think I need to really, I don't know, maybe I need to do a tutorial with somebody, I don't know, or get a friend to sit down and do something with me. And just the technical side is fine, but I think it's more also deciding what I want it to look like and how I want it to feel. And sometimes I think I'm just being too perfectionist about it. So I just maybe
Definitely think those aesthetic choices that you're making in the edit suite are really important to the resolution of your image, to getting it where you want it to be. And I think when people start out editing, and people that I've found and have helped with improving their editing technique, has been really around getting their mindset around, what do you want this to look like? How do you want it to feel? Do you want it more moody? Do you want it warm? And do you want a gauzy, misty, dreamy look? These are all things that you can do. It depends on what you want to do. And I might be talking about a few extremes there, but they're just cases in point around what you can do depending on how you want your image to look. And it's making those decisions up front that then starts to guide your workflow to say, okay, this is how, whether it's a particular style that you want to have, or if you don't want to have a style and you want to be very varied in your images and each image individually, you've got to then think about what it is that you want to do with it to make those decisions about which levers to pull, which sliders are going to go left or right and how far.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing too, in terms of style, is because maybe I'm not exactly sure what my style is. And so maybe part of the editing is that I'm not sure how I want, like what I want to convey with it. So I think that's, or maybe sometimes it's me deciding for myself, out of all of the options, which option do I want to choose? And do I want to do it this way or that way? And for me, I'm not generally a moody person.
Yeah.
Like I've seen some image, more influencer kind of stuff where it's like everything is, to me, someone's selling presets and it's all done. But why would you do that? Because every scene's going to look the same, and they didn't all look the same. And then you're getting rid of the colors that were there. And so I don't understand, to me, that I wouldn't do that. And yeah, I just need to get into it more and practice more and develop it a bit more.
Yeah, fair enough. Do you do printing? Do you print your work? And if so?
No, I don't, because of this perfectionist editing kind of side. And because, yeah, I think because I feel like I'm not good enough at editing, I feel like the image won't be good enough for printing. And so it's like and because of this perfectionist thing, it's like, when is it actually going to be ready to be good enough to print?
Interesting.
So, yeah, so I've not done that yet. Perfectionism is like a big problem for me. I really need to let that go, but it's really hard to do that. And knowing it and doing it, or knowing that you are that way and then not doing that is two different things. So no, so I haven't yet. There's a few images that I have that I've had I've had a few people say that, oh, if you ever print that, I'd love a copy of it. Oh, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, so maybe it's something I'll get into, but I know certainly in terms of selling prints, that's also very difficult.
Yeah, it's a difficult game to win.
Yeah. So if I was going to do that, it would be more for me, for my own place, or for friends or family, rather than really as a sales thing. Or I don't know, if I was going to do like postcard, like small things that are kind of like a business tool, like kind of thing, as a promotional kind of thing. But yeah, so no, it's a long answer to say, no, I have not printed.
An interesting experiment you might try is put together a book for yourself. I do. We do roughly an annual one. Sometimes we do a couple. We might do one about a particular holiday, and it'll be a mix of snapshots off phones, drone shots, artistic full frame shots, basically replacing photo albums. But it's giving us a feeling for, okay, this is what we did this year, or this, and it's my wife and I that we sit down and put it together. I get a lot of the technical stuff out of the way in terms of setting the book up, but she then says, okay, I want that there. I want this in this position on that page. I want that one larger. I want that one smaller, so forth. So she has as much input into the book. That's why I say we, not just me. But in those books, it has two things to it. One, it's improved my editing quite a bit, even on the JPEGs that might come from my wife's phone. But it also gives me something tangible at the end of the day that you can look back and go, it is literally replay. I've got a shelf here on the bookcase, which is just full of old photo albums with the old 5x4s and whatever stuck in the pages with the plastic leaf over the top of them. And it's really replacing those. And to be honest, I just find that it's a bit of work putting one together, but if you're only doing one a year, it doesn't matter. So it is an exercise which gives you something tangible at the end and gives you something that you can look back on and go, okay, I did some interesting stuff here. And it might not, as I say, what I'm doing is not just about, here's my artistic photography, here's a blend of that as well as the more eclectic family related stuff that we might have done during the year.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because for my dad, like when I was growing up and I was saying that I was influenced by my dad. So my dad would he would have like my most treasured possession from everything from ever is all the family photo albums.
Absolutely.
So I was very meticulous about, and this is, you can see these old sort of funny colored kind of prints from back in the 70s, but everything like my parents when they first met, and then they were getting married, and then I'm born, and then my brother was born, and all the family holidays we did. And then after I left home, we got family Christmases and all this other kind of stuff. And just, it's like the history of our family life. And yeah, that's the thing. Like, I don't, everything I have is on my phone or on my laptop or on an external hard drive. Not necessarily memories as such. I do have stuff that's on my phone as memories. I have to scroll back through it, and I'm not just picking up a book and flipping through. Oh yeah, I remember it. Oh, that was really great. What an amazing spot. Or yeah, so that's, and I think also too, just because I am living in two different places, and right now most of my stuff is in storage. It's
Carrying all that stuff around, I get it.
Oh yeah. So I have to wait till I'm based back in one place where that's my home base, whether it's Vancouver or something. Sure. And then I'll start doing that. And then maybe I'll start printing my own work. And that's the thing too, in terms of buying other people's prints. I've not done that so much in the past either, because I feel like, but I've got all of my own stuff that I like. Why am I not printing and framing my own stuff to put up on the wall? I should be doing that, not somebody else's. Yeah.
Yeah. And yet there's other people that have the opposite thinking around that, where they don't want their own work on their own walls. They want somebody else's that can inspire them and they look at. So to each his own, but if you want to see a resolved image, print it.
Yeah, no, I definitely should. I definitely will at some point.
Have you ever struggled with hitting a creative wall? And if so, how did you handle it?
Yeah, I've said I'm a waterfall chaser, a keen waterfaller, and a waterfall photographer, I should say. So was it 2 years? Wait a second. What year was it? Hang on. We were in 2025. I have to count backwards. So 2022, I think it was. Anyhow, it was some summer where we had a particularly dry, warm summer in Scotland, and I wasn't doing much shooting anyhow. And there was not a lot of water in the waterfalls, and I wasn't out. And I just lost my waterfall mojo. And so I was like, oh, okay, that's it. So now I'm doing some other things. And maybe that's just part of the progression of being a photographer, is that you lose interest in a subject that's been a passion and you move on to something else. So maybe I'm just not a waterfall photographer anymore. And so it's kind of like, oh, that's a shame, but that's how it is. And so then it was Christmas of my younger brother lives in Brazil. He's married to Brazilian. And so I was going to visit him and his wife, and I'd never met her before. So this is Christmas of 2022. So I went for months, like mid-December 2022 into mid-January 2023. And they're in the south of Brazil, and they're on the coast. And I was like, okay, what am I going to shoot? There's not really that much to shoot here. And so I was like, okay, let me look on a map, and it's like, oh, there are a lot of waterfalls here. And so even though I didn't go to that many, I started looking on maps and saving them on my app and stuff like that. And it got me interested in waterfalls again. So there was that. Then also, and it hasn't really come back the same way. This is more a subject rather than a real creative rep, but like previously, especially when I was doing the wider landscapes, I was really, I'd say, more of a mountain photographer. That was my thing. And it was after my mom died, which was in March 2018, that I just wanted to be by the sea. And I also lost my mountain mojo, also in terms of hiking. And I wasn't interested in shooting mountains. I wasn't really interested in climbing up a mountain or hiking up a mountain. And I just by the sea. And so the same thing, I thought, oh, that's it. Mountains are done for me. That's it. And then it has come back, but not also quite in the same way. So I'm not photographing mountains as much as I used to. In terms of other ruts, my rut, I'd say, is more just in that I'm not going out shooting enough as much as I. And suddenly, oh crap, it's been like 3 months since I've been out shooting, like properly shooting. Oh, I've got to get back into that. And I do notice when I take some time off that not like I've lost my skills, but I have to like get back into it a bit and get the eye seeing things, like get the natural reactions happening. So I find my images back when I'm first getting back into it are maybe not quite as good.
You can't switch flow state on and off real quick. You've got to ease into it, I think.
Yeah. But I find often if I'm feeling a bit creatively dry, then I'll just go out and shoot something else, or go out and do something. So there was, when I was back in Canada a couple of winters ago, 3 winters ago, I was over on Vancouver Island in Victoria, and I just went out one evening. It was dark already, and I just basically played, and I just did some urban ICM, and I was like light painting kind of stuff, I guess you could say. And most of them are probably not images I would ever share, but it was really super fun. And it just having that child play kind of aspect to it again. And so I think to me, that's a thing I want a bit more of that. I want to be going out and having fun and not taking it so seriously and going out to got to get this shot just right and got it like this. And I've got to make sure it's aesthetically pleasing and technically correct and all that. I just want to go out and shoot fun stuff. And maybe they're going to be crap, but it's just that kind of giddy, playful kind of thing. So that's, just shooting something different and making it fun is, I think, how I get out of the rut.
What's the best and or worst advice you've ever been given?
Ooh, best is probably all to do with trusting yourself, not comparing yourself to others, like doing your own, shooting in your own way, your own subjects, and not trying to do what others are doing. Because I think we all have our own way of seeing things and our own approaches. I'd say that's probably the best. The worst. Ooh, what is the worst advice I've had? It's probably like more social media kind of stuff, like all this stuff. Oh, you must be consistent and you must post every day and you must do these.
You'll follow this trend.
Yeah, do all the training, use these songs, do these kinds of reels and videos, and that's not who I am. That's not what I'm about, and that's not what I want to do. You've got to do this to be relevant, and I have I don't know if I want to say love-hate relationship with social media. I used to love it back in like when I was coming out of burnout and early Instagram days, and it was for me to connect with things that were positive and the beauty of the world and all that kind of stuff. And then I started making connections and getting to know other photographers. So I love it for that side of it. But nowadays I just find it's so discouraging. It's so draining. It's such a time suck and no reach, no engagement. And it's like an echo chamber and it's not fun anymore.
Yeah.
So, when someone's, oh, you've got to do this. If you're not on there, you're not relevant. Yeah, you know what, whatever. Then I don't really care because it's just not doing much for me. And so I think that's the worst advice, to just be relevant, be consistent.
Yeah. Speaking about social media and so forth, what do you see as the future of photography? The democratization of it has obviously exploded, which has had some adverse effects, but it's also had some wonderful effects as well. But what do you see as the future of photography?
That's a good question. Well, it's difficult to say with AI coming up now, and often you can't, or certainly people who, let's say, more untrained eye can't recognize now when something is AI. There's more copyright infringement, all that kind of stuff. I think it's still really going to always be an important tool for memories. And that's another thing I forgot earlier, memory, like for photography. The other thing that photography is to me, it's like a diary. It's a way for me to remember what I'm doing when and the feelings I had and things I saw and that kind of thing. So I think it'll still always be used for that because people have phones. They use their phones for that. I think it's going to be a tool for communicating with each other and messaging, like getting a message out, whether it's conservation or social causes or whatever. Yeah. I think in terms of photography as a career, I think it's going to become more difficult where people are, or businesses or companies are using AI instead of coming to a paid photographer.
Bill.
So yeah, it's a watch this space kind of thing and let's see what happens. And hopefully there'll be more, what do you call it? Warnings. Let's say that warning, this is an AI image. This is not real, so that people can actually identify it. Yeah, basically same as you have like warnings on cigarette packets or whatever, that warning, this is an AI image. This is not real. So yeah, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes and how it moves forward. And also just in terms of the gear itself, like how is that going to advance and how is that going to change? Yeah, like I'm still on a DSLR and nobody's using DSLR. The companies aren't even making them anymore. I need to get onto a mirrorless pretty soon. That's going to be my next big purchase, I think, later this year. I'm switching finally to mirrorless.
I made the shift about 6 months ago or so. And yeah, I like a lot of the new features that are on the new camera, but I also still quite like using the DSLR simply because it's still got some fun left in it.
Yeah. I think for me, it's some of the things that I'm now finding where I'm limited by my old camera. So if I'm doing multiple exposure stuff, mine doesn't have the light and dark blend that I'm on Canon, that the other ones have, or some of the higher models have. I don't have the automatic focus stacking, so I've got to do it manually. And as I said, with editing, it seems like I've got this ton of focus stack images that I've never processed because I'm like, oh God, that's going to be a major faff and that's going to take ages and I can't be bothered. I'll do it some other time. So also if I'm starting to do, not if I am starting to do some wildlife stuff, and I've done some bird things. And so just having that auto tracking with the eyes and stuff like that, those are things that I'd like to have that I don't have or don't easily have on my current camera. And also the weight, as I was talking earlier about just the weight. I appreciate having the mirrorless for the lighter weight. But yeah, my current camera, I've had it now for 7 years, and it's 7.5 years. It's been doing the job. It's still great, still works well. Touch wood, what happens to it until I upgrade. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things go forward. Even just with filters, you can see everybody's now doing the magnetic filters instead of the glass slider. So yeah, so we'll see what happens.
Sounds good. Who else should I be talking to on the podcast? Give us a couple of names.
My list here. So I've got a few names, actually. They're all going to be women, and they're all going to be Canadian or Canada. Yep. So one woman is Ash Foykin. She's based in the Kootenays in southeastern BC. So she does landscapes, and she does a lot of outdoor adventure stuff in mountains, but she also has been in the past few years doing a lot, I guess you could, documenting of the wildfires that we've been getting in BC. And she did an article in a magazine about that a few months ago. Jenny Wong, she's also a scientist, an environmental scientist. She does a lot of stuff with the message as well, obviously conservation focused, but she's doing a lot of stuff up in northern Canada and the Arctic, and with some in Northwest Territories, and with some of the Indigenous communities up there. So she's going up and showing what's happening up there. Who else do I have? Daisy Gilardini, who I think is originally Swiss, but she's based in Canada. She does a lot of wildlife, but she also does some landscape and, again, conservation focus. She's a photographer in residence with Canadian Geographic, the Arctic and Antarctic stuff as well. And another person is Dorota Ullman, and she does a lot of macro. She's mainly macro, and she does quite pretty intimate scenes kind of stuff. So yeah, those are my recommendations.
Awesome. Thank you very much. The last question's one that you probably already know your answer to, and everyone that's listening should know the question that's coming up. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
So the answer to that is no. Back in my younger days during university, having a ham and pineapple pizza was not unheard of. So I think if you're going to have pineapple, you need the ham. And I'm vegan, and I'm also wheat intolerant. So I'm dairy and wheat intolerant. So I'm basically gluten-free. So finding vegan, gluten-free pizzas in general is not that easy. So yeah, so I'd say no to the pineapple. Like pineapple on its own, but not in a pizza.
Fair enough. You're not into faking?
No, not so much. Yeah, some of the I don't understand why, if you've got a
neither do I.
vegan chicken or vegan ham,
you want it to be like meat.
Yeah, I don't know if it's supposed to be tailored to people who have been meat eaters who are now switching to being vegetarian.
Maybe it's a transition food.
Yeah, no, I see these sandwich things in particular, and I don't want fake chicken or fake ham. I want,
just
lentils and things like that.
Fantastic. All right, Fiona, we've got to wrap up now. So thank you so much for being on the show. It's been wonderful having time with you, learning about you and what you do. Where can people find your work?
So I have a website, which is a thorn in my side because it always seems to be under construction and not getting finished, but it is getting worked on by someone right now. So that's at FionaMcLeanPhotography.com. Instagram is probably where I'm most active. And so I'm on Fiona McLean Photo on there. And then I'm sporadically on Facebook and Blue Sky and Threads. Those are a little bit less photography oriented and a little bit more sort of conservation messages and stuff like that. So I'd say predominantly my website and Instagram.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Fiona.
Welcome. Thanks very much for having me on. It was great to chat with you.
Cheers. Have you ever taken some time to look at your work and how you could actually use that for environmental causes or environmental protection or conservation activities? If so, leave a comment below. I'm really interested to hear from you and find out a little bit more about other people that are doing that sort of work. Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com. I'm also on Vero, Photo, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Don't forget to comment and subscribe because it really helps the podcast to get seen. I'm Grant Swinburne and hope to see you out shooting soon.